Welcome to the ZoomInfo Labs podcast. I'm Ben Salzman.
And I'm Millie Beetham.
Today we have a truly special episode for you as we're joined by none other than our very own CEO, Henry Schuck. He shared his inspiring journey building ZoomInfo from day one, the challenges and success along the way, and what's inspiring him today.
We dive deep into AI and discuss the new ZoomInfo Copilot and how AI is transforming business and revolutionizing how our customers go to market. We also explore the core principles behind successful go-to-market strategies and uncover insights from Henry's interactions with top executives. It was a great chat you'll want to hear. So let's get into it.
Okay, welcome to the ZoomInfo Labs podcast. Today is a very special episode. I'm here with my esteemed colleagues, Millie and Aaron, as always. And today we have on our favorite guest that we've ever had and probably ever will have, our own CEO, Henry Schuck. Henry, how are you doing?
Ben, would you call this the specialist? Would this be the specialist podcast you've ever done?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like this is a joy, and I'm really pumped to have you on to tell your story.
This is how you look when you're pumped?
Yes, I'm very pumped. I feel like this is a long time coming because, you know, we've been talking about doing a podcast like this, and you've been the one that we've wanted to have on from the beginning. So really appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast today. I want to share a little bit about your background, the history of building this company. But with all the exciting news around Copilot, we're going to spend a lot of time on AI, signal-based selling, and how we're helping transform the market for all of our customers. But before we get into all that, just talk to us a little bit about your journey and the company that you've built here over the last 15 years.
Sure. So 17, just for counting. I founded the company in 2007. I was 23 years old. I was just finished my first year in law school. And I'd worked at a similar company when I was an undergrad. And what I realized was that there was this incredible hunger for data on people to sell your products and services to. And that as sophisticated as we thought businesses were and their marketing and sales organizations were, this asset of a perfect prospect and customer database and who to reach out to at those companies just didn't organically or magically exist inside of companies anywhere. And so there was this incredible demand for this type of data. And I'd worked at a company that did something similar, but didn't really build a business around it. And so after my first year in law school, decided, hey, let's build something. Let's build a durable business model around it. And let's give sellers and marketers really high quality data on the companies and then the people at those companies that they should be engaging with. And that was really the first iteration of what was then called Discover.org. And throughout the years, that's evolved and sophisticated. And I assume we'll talk a bit about how that's all come together.
For sure. And, it's always funny looking back when you think like, wow, when I thought about it this way at the beginning, like it's sort of embarrassing of like, all that you know now. When you look back 15 years ago and you were like up at night dreaming of where the company could go, maybe talk about like your previous vision for sort of like what it would look like in 2024 when you started the company and how that's changed with AI. I'm sure some of that has been sort of recolored by AI.
Yeah, I don't think the original vision was much broader than provide really great data to customers, on their customers and their prospects. But what you ended up realizing along the way was people wanted to put their time and resources behind the area or the group of companies who were most likely to buy their products and services. And so they wanted the ability to say, okay, well, I'm not going to sell to Johnny's dry cleaner down the street. The companies that I sell to are bigger, or they're in this industry, or they're in this location, or they're within the zip code, or they use a certain technology, or they just got a certain amount of funding, or they have a CIO. All of these different ways that people wanted to basically carve up the universe of their total addressable market to be able to make sure that they were spending their time on exactly the right companies. And so we started building in like additional intelligence that surrounded that core company and contact data. But then I think along the way, the next thing that we realized, and I think Ben at Dogpatch, a lot of the work that you were doing before we acquired the company was around like, what is another static data point that we can include that carves up the list a little bit more and allows us to be a bit more personalized when we go reach out to people. And I think ultimately what we realized is carving that static list of attributes to find the companies that based on static available data are the most likely to buy your products and services is your step one. And step two is not every company's in market to buy a cybersecurity solution or a sales intelligence solution or an HCM solution at any given moment. There's a small subsegment of companies, 10%, that are in market to buy your products and services at any given time. So if I just took that static list of companies, even across that static list of companies, 1 out of 10 times am I going to knock into somebody who really wants to buy my products and services or is in market for my products and services. And so what you really want to be able to do is identify which 10% are in market now and who are the next 10% who are going to be in market after this like 3-month sales cycle passes. And so you do that in a non-digital world. It's very difficult to do that.
Yep.
In a digital world, you have this opportunity to go look at signals that are indicating somebody's in market for your products and services. So maybe they visited your website. Maybe they said something about a project that they were initiating in a job posting. Maybe they said something in an earnings call. Maybe the CEO or CMO or CFO was on a podcast and mentioned that they were trying to solve some problem. Maybe they just hired a CMO, and you know that every time a company hires a CMO, they're going to make these types of changes. Maybe a new member of your buying committee came in. Maybe a champion who bought your product moved into the next company. Maybe they're just researching your products and services on the B2B web in a bigger way than they had historically. So how do we take now the signal that tells us in this static list, these are the people who are in market, and how do we make sure we put resources behind those key companies and the key individuals who make those purchasing decisions at those companies? And so we started building out a broad set of signals that our customers could engage with. The problem is now you were basically telling the customer, hey, there are 50 signals that you might be able to leverage. And if you click 100 buttons inside of ZoomInfo, you can kind of figure out who those companies were. I think the power of AI for us today is that it can take all of that signal, it can understand the customer, it can understand the end market, and then it can bring that signal together and tell you, here are the companies you should be engaging with because of these reasons, and then here's how you should be engaging with them. That's a really powerful change in user experience. It's a really powerful change in the way companies are able to focus on the right companies at the right time without having to build some weird machine to pull in all of this signal from all of these different places. That's what makes Copilot a really compelling solution.
To me, the breakthrough is, you said it there, but it's around unification, like first and third party data together, like market context and, content, insights, et cetera, and bringing sales and marketing together. Like there's just a lot, I think, here on connecting folks. We're going to talk a lot about AI and Copilot, Henry, but before we do, you talk to a ton of customers, probably a lot of CEOs, a lot of, other executives in go-to-market. Aside, like putting AI aside for the second, what are the core principles or the core sort of like operating principles that you see from the best go-to-market folks these days on how they run the business? And, obviously you have a ton of those insights from building quite a machine here at ZoomInfo. But what's the common thread for the really highest performing folks in go-to-market?
I think the common thread is they're trying to marry first and third party data to identify the best companies to go after. And if you're talking to a product, like a product-led growth business, they want to leverage insights that are coming out of their products. And if you're talking to a telecom business, they want to leverage information that tells you when a business just opened. And if you're talking to a cybersecurity business, they want to leverage every time a company hires a chief information security officer or their first director of information security. And so there are all these really interesting first party insights that if you marry with third party data, give you that roadmap of who to engage with. The best ones are like creating a hypothesis around that. And then they're testing a control group against that hypothesis and saying like, look, if we make 100 calls to this control group, conversion rate looks like this, ultimate revenue looks like this. If we make 100 calls to this group of people we believe are in market for our services, have an event that triggered our outreach, then conversion rate is like this. It's 2, 3, 4, 5, 10x what it is in the control group. How do we find more companies that look like the 10x group? And then how do we find like what's the 8x group or the 3x group underneath that, and really stack our spend and our resource allocation according to that.
And Henry, how does that inform like what you're thinking about in terms of building like next, like what's next for Copilot, what's next for ZoomInfo based on what you're hearing from those best customers and leaders out in the field?
Yeah, I think it's kind of two big things. One is, we have a group of people here who just think every day about where does additional signal live? And like, where is another place that we can get signal? And do we want to own that signal ourselves? Or do we want to have it be a partner that plugs into an ecosystem of ours? And so like, G2, Trust Radius, Technology Advice, they're creating all of this really interesting signal about when someone's reading about your competitor or doing research on a specific category. And our customers are using that data, but ultimately, how does that data get activated? It gets activated by a sales rep. Like the vast majority of signal that's being generated by marketing, the vast majority of ABM channel that gets activated is through a sales team. And so it's one thing to have the mechanism to tell you which companies you should go after each day. It's another to create a really easy way for those signals to be actioned by sellers. And CRM is not the place. The sellers aren't engaging in CRM because it's insightless. And so what is that interface where account executives, account managers, SDRs, marketers are going to go activate the data that tells them these are the companies they should be engaging with? Because that is the only way you get any value out of the signal. That's the only way you get any value out of the AI that's telling you who to engage with. And so you have to have a mechanism that allows you to easily activate this data. And so I think that's where we'll continue to iterate that and signal. Like, where do we get more signal? How do we make sure it gets activated on?
One of the things, Henry, about this rollout of Copilot and Account AI and a lot of the things that we launched recently that excites me is I can tell how good a product is by how excited I am to demo it to the customer. I'm like, I know this is going to land. I have been pleasantly surprised at the reaction from customers. What have been your biggest learnings as you show this to customers and maybe some aha moments? You're like, oh shit, we're onto something here.
I know this is I have no question that this is the place that go-to-market teams are going. Like and I think there was like a 2-year period between like 2022 and 2024 where it wasn't exactly clear what go-to-market professionals really wanted and needed. And I think that's where you saw this just like proliferation of like random point solutions in sales tech and marketing tech space. A bunch of just stuff like this for product data, this for routing, this for attribution, this for this type of ABM and that for that type of ABM, and 19 different conversation intelligence tools and a layer over ChatGPT, like a bunch of stuff. And I think like the space in general was just trying to figure out like what do we want? Like, and mainly, how do we drive productivity? And that's basically what everybody wants. They want to be able to drive growth, but ultimately they want to drive productivity. 2010 to 2022, productivity was being solutioned by giving people an application layer to kind of automate or technologically enhance some previously disorganized or offline process. And so like, hey, I send emails to connect with my customers. Let's have an automation system that allows me to build one email and have a lot go out. CRM is a great example of that. I used to have that in an offline way. It wasn't online. It wasn't organized. Now let's make all of that organized. So in one place, I know who my contacts are and I know what stage of opportunity they're in. That's an interesting way to get at productivity. I think what we realized is that the much more impactful way to get at productivity is to make sure that when you go do an action, when you go spend money, when you allocate a sales resource at something, that it's being allocated at the thing that is most likely to turn into revenue in your business. And like everything else, all that automation stuff, it's like designed to do a bunch of work. But if I reach out to 10 people and all 10 of them are not in market for my products or services, they're the wrong fit, there's no signal behind them, doesn't matter how automated I was with that outreach, the result is going to be the same. And so really changing the view of productivity to be from a lens of like, how do I get the most out of automating the work that my team does, to how do I make sure that when they do work, it's pointed at exactly the right thing. That's a step change that I think AI unlocks. And it's how we view the world today and really where go-to-market is going. The most sophisticated practitioners, when you show up to have that conversation with them, they're never talking about like, you know what, if I just deployed this tool, I could save my reps 3 hours a week. No one's talking like that. What the way people talk about is like, how do I get in front of exactly the right opportunity that's in market to buy my products and services? I don't ever want to lose those. And if you think over like a 5 or a 10-year arc, and you just ask yourself like, what will be the same 5 years from now and 10 years from now, you get a lot more clarity on what you want to invest behind.
Thinking a little bit about AI internally for us, Henry, I have been encouraged by how many flowers have bloomed on just use cases for us to build out efficiency internally. Can you just talk a little bit about how AI has unlocked, impact and efficiency for us as a company, not just in Copilot, but broadly?
For all of the talk on VC Twitter about like how everything's over because of AI, we are like 1.5 years forward from when OpenAI and ChatGPT was like released to the broad market. And if you rewound back 1.5 years ago and you said, hey, what is the universe going to look like 1.5 years from now? What is enterprise software going to look like 1.5 years from now? A lot of people would have told you there was going to be just like this massive overhaul and change in the way that we did business over the next 18 months. And, you could fast forward it 2 years too. Like in November of this year, it's not going to be that much different than it is right now. And so in 2 years of like broad availability of this AI, of these large language models, and not that much has changed. Like things have changed at the margin, but a lot slower than what you would have imagined was going to happen or what we predicted was going to happen. And so, look, I think in general, the pace of change has been slower than I anticipated, and I think that most people anticipated. The pace of technological advancement in the LLMs has been really fast, but the pace of adoption inside of companies has not been as swift. We've done a number of things internally leveraging AI. The other day, I got a report from our FP&A team, and I said, like, why are you guys giving me this report? Just run it through AI. And they're like, yeah, that is what you're seeing. You're seeing an AI generated version of the narrative on top of the analytics and the data. We use it for, historically, we have a bunch of really interesting coaching dashboards that rank our account managers and our account executives and tell them like, hey, you sell a high velocity of deals, but your discount rate is too high. And so then like, how do we coach them on driving price, maintaining price and reducing velocity to maintain that price. But we have all this analytic on our account executives and account managers, and it's hard to look at the analytic and go like, how do I take this data point and associate it to how I coach and performance coach my rep? And we've leveraged AI through that whole motion to go like, here's how you talk to John, and here's how you talk to Mary, and here's how you talk to whoever based on the results that we're seeing from them quarter in, quarter out. And then there are like kind of easy stuff too, like if you wanted to find what ZoomInfo's HR policy was on anything, you had to like, I don't know, like do a whole bunch of weird stuff in the intranet, and then you end up in like a Google Doc somewhere that you have to search for the result. Today, there's just a Slack bot that you can go to and say like, hey, what's our policy? Does our insurance reimburse for IVF? And the answer will just come back. Yes, it does, up to this amount. This is how you do it. And so like making people get like the access to data and answers from that data, that's been probably the biggest, that's where AI has had the biggest impact at ZoomInfo.
Henry, I think your point right around the fact that there hasn't been this like monumental shift yet is a really good one. And I think it's very much a part of the discussion like throughout the market right now, right? We thought that was going to have this like major shift to sort of everything that we interact with today. And, people are just using it to build an itinerary for their next vacation. But I feel like Copilot is this big shift, right? This big opportunity for AI to really make a meaningful impact and go to market. What are you hearing from the demos that you and the rest of the ZoomInfo team are giving to customers today? What's the reaction from folks around Copilot so far?
Well, let me answer that in two ways. I think the first, there's a tremendous amount of excitement around this, and I think the reason for that is nobody's delivered to the marketplace real AI for go-to-market teams. And where you've seen AI really deliver is around customer service, customer support. And if you take a step back and you go, why is that? Like, why is customer support so far ahead from AI disrupting the space and AI doing a better job than humans? Like, why is that in customer success and customer service, but not really anywhere else in the business? And I think the big reason for that is for AI to be successful on top in customer success or customer service, it only needs to have your first party data. I can just give AI all of my first party data, every support ticket, every answer to the support ticket, all of the Slack channels, all of the knowledge base. It's all my first party data. I can hand it over and say like, be smart about answering the next time this question comes up. And it does that really well. You don't need any third party data in order for the customer service bot to do a better job than the human being. And that is very different in go-to-market land. Just like if you want to leverage just your first-party data to deliver you generative AI efficiencies and effectiveness, like you can't. Like imagine if your whole universe was just what was in your CRM to drive the next best customer you should engage with. Like, what do you get from it? What like stage your opportunity is in, and like whatever the sales rep decided to put into Salesforce, which is basically nothing. And then whatever like the person filled out when they filled out a form on your website, which is incomplete and often inaccurate. You just cannot build AI for go-to-market without third-party data and insights. And nobody who no scaled player, Salesforce, Microsoft, Adobe, whoever, has third-party data that drives insights that allows you to actually build go-to-market AI. And that's why you're not seeing any of it like take over. But you want to build AI for customer service? No problem. You don't really need anything special to do that. You want to build it for go-to-market? Then you've got to have a really great third-party data asset. You've got to have signals. You have to have insight. You have to be able to take first-party data and normalize it, then enrich it, then append it, then marry it to insight. And like nobody can do that, really except for us. And so the CRM and the first party data is necessary, but it's not sufficient to build something for go-to-market. And I think that's why you haven't seen anybody show up with a real end-to-end solution. That's also why when we show up to a customer and we show them this, they're like, holy, I've never seen anything like this. I'm like, the reactions are really amazing. By the way, we work with, 35,000 customers. Not all of them are like VC-backed tech firms in Silicon Valley. And so like when it's an incredible opportunity to show up at a software company in Ohio that has 100 employees and they've never seen anything like this.
Yes.
That's really fun. I think what's great about it is the people here who are building the product, who are thinking about the future, they are trying to figure out like, how do I solve a sophisticated problem for the middle market tech company that uses a complicated tech stack and is like sophisticated in the way they think about AI. That's who we're going to solve problem for. When we do that, that scales to the enterprise, it scales to the SMB, it scales outside of tech. And so we're in this great position where we're building AI product based on a future looking universe, but then we get to go bring it to people who are nowhere near understanding that universe. And we really get to sophisticate their processes in a short period of time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was talking with one of our mid-market leaders yesterday, and one of our first Copilot deals that we sold yesterday was to a refrigerator, like a guy who owns a company where he sells refrigerated trucks. And he was like, yes, I must have this. This is going to revolutionize my business. His digital, website doesn't look like he's updated it since 1995, but this thing is going to move the needle for him. Like, that's an incredible story, right? Like you said, Henry, to bring that, like what feels sort of like as far away or unattainable tech to like every single business, across the globe.
Yeah, it's a pretty exciting opportunity. And I think like the difference between this and kind of anything that we thought about building between 2020 and 2023 is that it's very, very clear this is the direction that go-to-market is going, and we're not going to take any resources off of it. And so like what you see with Copilot today is, Sam Altman said like GPT-4, I'm embarrassed that you have to use GPT-4. Like it's the worst LLM you'll ever have to interact with, and you'll be embarrassed about it a year from now. And that is like how I feel about Copilot. It's like, it's amazing, and people are going to see incredible value from it. But 1 year from now, you look back on the thing that it is today and go like, oh my God, I'm so glad ZoomInfo maintained all of their engineering and product resources on this thing, because it's really amazing.
So as you play things forward a bit and the impact from AI really starts to permeate organizations in a more meaningful way than perhaps it has so far, how do you think about the dollars being saved? Where are they being reinvested, if at all, or are they just sort of fundamentally changing cost structures for business overall?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was at a CEO roundtable a couple months ago, and there was a CEO of a publicly traded multi-billion-dollar company, and his question was around, hey, we're doing all of this interesting stuff with AI, and I'm presenting it to the board, and what my board is asking me is, when is it going to show up in the P&L? And like, how are you guys thinking about when it shows up in the P&L? There's 20 CEOs, and nobody has nailed it to that level of like precision. They're not, at ZoomInfo, there are places where like, particularly around content writing, that you don't need to have the same hiring plans as you had before, because when you layer AI in to write content, you can, you could get 3 people out of 1, 4 people out of 1. And we're seeing that happen here. So I think, where do those dollars go? That you take them out of the like 4 head count that you were going to hire for content writing, and you put it into programs, you put it back into product, you put it back into engineering, you put it back into go to market, you put it back into like the revenue driving areas of the business, or the innovation centers of the business. So I think what you'll probably see is 2 things. In the short term, what you'll see is I take dollars out of areas that I was going to hire in or grow in, or I don't have to backfill in anymore. And I put those dollars in other parts of my business that drive innovation and growth. And I think over the long term, what you'll see is just higher margin software businesses where, like, you know, a 10% margin is not enough, that you should be a 30% margin business and you should have less employees and you should be leveraging AI to get those cost savings that actually do make their way to the bottom line. I think in the interim, they're going to find their way into innovation and top line performance.
And I love your comment about, like, looking back in a year. I think Reid Hoffman was the one who said, if you aren't embarrassed by your V1, you launched too late. So totally agree with that. A couple of last questions here, Henry, as we're wrapping up. We're having the head of sales for OpenAI on later today. One of the questions we're going to ask him is, how does this new multimodal approach, right, being able to see, hear, et cetera, change things for them broadly? But maybe in go-to-market, are you already starting to think about, like, this is probably a few years out, but it feels like we're going to end up taking advantage of this multimodal world. Are you even thinking about?
Are you just trying to get me to let you buy an Apple Vision Pro?
Yes,
again?
the whole podcast was just
this is literally what it is. You just want ZoomInfo to fund the purchase of an Apple Vision Pro so that you can geek out on multimodal AI.
That's it. That's the main thing. That's it.
Yep.
So is that a yes? Because you did say we're going to funnel more money into the innovation centers of the business. So here we are.
You go find the savings for it and we'll fund it. How does the multimodal approach affect, look, I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about this. You can imagine wearing, like, some version of sunglasses at a conference and someone walks up and says, like, I'm Jenny from, Cintas. And it goes and, like, pulls up all of the Cintas information. It immediately tells you what to talk to her about. They're a customer. They're spending this much. They're happy with this. They're unhappy with that. And all of that is, like, real time. And you can have a much more informed conversation with all of that information at your fingertips. That's where I think, like, that's the first thought that jumps into my mind.
Yeah, I like it. I think the sound, the audio should also play a part of, like, while you're driving to work, shouldn't you be able to have a conversation with your first and third party data while you're driving? Like,
totally.
There's gonna, I mean, that's probably gonna happen sooner than later. Maybe, Henry, as you were first coming up to speed on AI, what were sort of the aha moments for you, either personally or professionally, of, like, oh shit, this is gonna be a thing?
So I'll give you a fun personal one. It wasn't when I realized, like, oh shit, it's gonna be a thing. But the personal one was, I started at nighttime asking my daughter to give me some ideas of a story she would want written. And then I would put in those prompts into ChatGPT, and I would say, like, hey, write a story about 4 kids, including a girl named Grace, who's 8 years old, who went swimming with their friends, and they found a pirate's treasure at the bottom of the pool. Like, write a whole story about it. They're also in Boston. So then it would write this great story, and I would read it to her, and she loved it. And then she was like, someone asked her, like, what is ChatGPT? And she said, it's a robot in your phone. I was like, okay, that's pretty good.
Yep.
She FaceTimed me one day and said, Daddy, did you hear? And I said, no, I didn't hear. She said, Elon Musk is suing ChatGPT. Is that going to be bad for ChatGPT? And I was like, who are you?
That's amazing.
It's like the perfect encapsulation of, like, my offspring. She knows what suing is. She knows who Elon Musk is, and she knows who ChatGPT is. It's pretty amazing.
And she's personally worried about ChatGPT.
Personally worried about ChatGPT. Yep. So a bunch of personal stuff, which is fun, but there are 2 moments where professionally I was like, wow, like, okay, there's a lot of potential here. The first one was the ChatGPT took the LSAT.
Yep.
And I think it scored a 168 on the LSAT, which is, like, in the 90th percentile or the, top 80th percentile. It's a better score than I scored when I went to law school. And then I went, like, oh, okay, so this thing is, like, smarter than the, like, vast majority of the population at being able to read questions and answer questions. It's like, okay, well, if it is smarter than most humans, then it means it can do a lot. And maybe the underpinnings of it aren't there yet, but the fact that in its early stages, it's answering LSAT questions better than 90% of the people who take the LSAT, that's kind of like, okay, like lots of light bulbs turned on. And then the second thing was the first time we rolled out a ChatGPT or an LLM summarization of meetings.
Yep.
And you saw that come through Chorus. So you would get off a call and then you would see the meeting summary. And it was like literally perfect, better than what you would have written, like this amazing output that captured all of the salient points. You just went, whew, okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And then your mind starts thinking about summarization mainly, like where are the other areas in the business or in the product that you can take large blocks of text and then summarize them in a really great way. And then there are a lot of opportunities for that, but that kind of gets the ball rolling. You got this really smart thing. It can summarize really well. What else can it do?
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing how Chorus spent, to Russell and Dominic and the whole team's credit, they did an amazing job on all of that. But I got more comments about those summaries in the first 5 days we rolled it out with AI than in the previous 5 years, right?
And it would have been very difficult to build that with your own AI.
Yeah, for sure. Henry, last question for you. This is our traditional last question. It's a two-part question. Who's the smartest person you've ever met? And what did you learn or take away from them that you've carried with you on building ZoomInfo or maybe personally?
So I won't give you like a smartest person, but I'll give you a smartest group. Every year, twice a year, I get together with the founders and CEOs of 4 other businesses: ClickUp, SimilarWeb, Tegus, and Technology Advice. And they're all kind of data related or software related. And we get together on a Thursday and we hang out through Sunday. And we spend like 4 days just like talking shop. That's it. We're like talking about the problems in our business, how we're solving them, things that we figured out. Everybody's kind of an expert in something else. And so we're trying to go deep on their expertise somewhere. And I walk away from each of those meetings like super inspired, ready to change something at ZoomInfo, ready to drive some sort of new innovation. And so that group as a whole has taught me a lot and inspired me in a lot of different ways.
Wonderful. Henry, thank you so much for coming on the ZoomInfo Labs podcast. Goes without saying, you probably would be a welcome recurring guest anytime. Thanks for spending the time. And really thanks for rallying the entire company around this Copilot launch. It reminds me of the sort of Tony Fadell moment where he went from idea to iPod in like 9 months. Like, it's amazing how fast you can go if you get everyone focused and you clear out a lot of the distractions. So kudos to you, and very excited to continue to bring this to market with the whole team.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Millie. Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the ZoomInfo Labs podcast.
For more from ZoomInfo Labs, subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me and Ben on LinkedIn and visit zoominfo.com/labs to get in touch.